Howdy, folks. It's me, your good buddy Uncle Bill. It's Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and that must mean it's time for Tuesdays with Fulci. No, that show's over with. It's time now for Finding Argento. So many people have texted or commented for so long about me ending this fucking show. Because I did all of the different episodes leading up to this point and then just kind of got frustrated with the fact that a lot of these movies, like, I couldn't find, or I didn't really want to try to watch them. And I did try to watch them, and then, like, I wanted to just throw myself in front of a car. But here we are. And I picked three. Ladies and gentlemen, that I feel like are going to be pretty indicative of his later work. So, I mean, we're going to be talking about three very, very different later Argento films. Some good, some amazing, and some disastrous, in my opinion. So, before that, I just want to take a minute to get a little look at the chat layout here. So let's see who we've got in here. There's a lot of people in here right now too. Okay, we got Category 3 and me. It's awesome to have you in here. Creep Peeps is in here. And Aiden Vavra. Awesome. Subjective Perspective Collective. Dylan's in here. That's awesome. Good to see you, man. Cinemurdrum. Manic Exorcism. I can't wait to dive deep into the steaming moistness of Dracula. That's going to be an interesting one. I think that this episode is going to have a little bit of something for everybody. If you hate these films or his later work, then you're gonna have something. If you love them, then you're gonna have something. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. All right, so there's a bunch of people still coming in. No, we're not gonna. Here's the thing. Here's what we're not gonna be talking about in this. We're not gonna be talking about. Do you like Hitchcock? We're not going to be talking about The Card Player. We're not going to be talking about Giallo, the movie Giallo. So there's a couple notable exceptions that are both considered good and bad that I'm not going to be talking about. Just because I just didn't have the time to get into all that stuff. But we are going to be talking about these three movies. I'm going to go ahead and show them. We got Mother of Tears, which, this is the DVD. This is the only version of this I have. I'm assuming there probably is a Blu-ray out. But this is the old Dimension Extreme DVD, which I think we may have got sent this at one time or another. We're going to be talking about Mother of Tears. We're going to be talking about this, Jim, Sleepless. And that's the Scorpion releasing version of that. And we're going to be talking about, yes, I do own this, Argento's Dracula 3D. And that's a Blu-ray 3D, which is fucking insane to think about. Alright. So, I'm not sure where to start. This is one of those shows where it's very kind of informal. So, as a side note to this too, anybody in here, if you want to come on and kind of like share something about a Argento film that you like, or something about one of these films that we're talking about. What I'd really like to do to end this is just get people to come on here and talk about like an Argento movie that they really love. But I'm willing to do whatever. Just private message me on here, the private chat on the side of the screen over there, and I will send you the link if you're not insane, of course. So let's start with, I don't know if I'm going to go in chronological order or not. Yeah, okay. Let's start with Mother of Tears. Saw this movie when it came out, and 2007, it's somewhere around this time. I don't know if it was right before or right after Argento did the Masters of Horror series. And he had like a little bit of a renaissance at that time too. Like people were checking his stuff out again, and he was really starting to, come back into some sort of public eye with a lot of people that had never really paid attention to him before. And this was the end of the Three Mothers trilogy that he had talked about doing since the 80s, I think. Now, there's an interesting whole story behind this movie and how it came about. So, in the 80s, I think it was in the mid-80s, Daria Nicolodi had written a script for what would be Mother of Tears. And there was some discussion at that point about, that she was going to help Argento write it and this and that. And this was really, really early on, like after Inferno. But that script and their relationship, I guess, where it deteriorated, later on, probably never saw the light of day. And it definitely never became what this movie is. So then there's a period of time, some revived interest around the early 2000s with ending this series. And so Argento wants to write the script on his own, so he starts to write it. And then probably one of the worst decisions that anybody could make, and that is that somehow or another, and I'm not sure how, maybe because of Masters of Horror, Argento decides that he's going to get some help writing the script, and hires Jace Anderson and Adam Garish, I think Garish, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, to help him write the script. If you're not familiar with those two, they are, for some reason, they became really, really big in the early 2000s and were scriptwriters in a lot of really, really horrible horror films. And so that kind of becomes the genesis of what will become Mother of Tears. But I think that Argento eventually kicks them both out because he's not happy with their work, which, hell, I wouldn't be either. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they wrote Alone in the Dark, the Uwe Boll Alone in the Dark. That's the one thing that I can remember that they did. So I don't think that that's a great testament or anything. But anyway, we've got the movie now. And so the trilogy ended. And some people mentioned on here it's better late than never for this series, but also better late than never that this actually came to a close. And I went back and rewatched this movie for this show. I loved this movie when it came out. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. And if I'm being completely honest, I still liked it, but it did not age great. And there's a lot of stuff in it that I was just kind of like, this is not the best. So I'll be talking about some of those elements in this too, but so much to kind of go through with this. So in the original Three Mothers trilogy, you had God, I can't believe I've forgotten all this stuff in such a short period of time. I had all this down pat. There was let's see, I'm gonna make sure I get this right. The genesis of that story is okay. Yeah, so you got Mater Lacrimarum, Mater Suspiriorum, and Mater Tenebrarium. Yeah. And this story focuses on Mater Lacrimarum, which is the mother of tears. Now, this whole series, I thought this was one of the more interesting things that I found out when I was researching this series. This whole series came about when Argento went on like a kind of like a vacation excursion across Europe, and he came upon a book, which was a book by De Quincey, which is Suspiria de Profundis. And in a section of that, it talks about the three personifications of sorrow, which are those three, and he turns that into the three mothers. So this is really like one of the later conceptualizations of that, which he did most of these in the late 70s, early 80s. So, you know, cast wise, you got, of course, his daughter's in this movie. I think his daughter was pretty much in every movie that he did around like the 2000s era. And the music was by Claudio Simonetti, who was in Goblin. The music in this film is nothing like Goblin, though. And I was really kind of disappointed to hear a lot of the score in this movie, because it just wasn't. That was one of the biggest problems that I had with it, really. Because if you're going to end this trilogy, you really need to go back to what made the other two films so great, which was the atmosphere, the music. A lot of that. This is more of like a modern day, you know, CSI kind of score, as opposed to the traditional gothic kind of score that Goblin did back in the day. Apparently, this film had a budget of $3.5 million, and at the box office, it made $3.1 million. So, not great. I hope and say that it probably did do its money back on home video, though. But yeah, Grande says that he never understood the hate for this movie. I don't understand the hate for it either. Like, it's not even on second watch where you're really paying attention to it. It's not an awful movie, but people hated this movie when it came out, and I don't know if it was because like the original two films were so like loved by people and were like cult classics. But people really despise this movie. So, you know, the plot of the film is as convoluted as the plot of the other two films are. And it basically centers around Asia Argento's character, who is, from what I can gather, some sort of art restoration expert. And she's working at like this museum, and they uncover this box that has these three statues in it, and kind of like this scroll thing. And, you know, much like an Evil Dead kind of fashion, they take the three statues out, and the assistant, which is Corlina Cataldi Tassani, who's been in a lot of Argento's films, she starts to read off while there's on this thing, and, you know, just this ominous music starts to play, and you realize that something is off and something's going on. She finds like a knife in there and some other stuff too. I can't remember exactly what it was. And like soon thereafter, she's killed in probably the most memorable way of the film. Anybody that's seen the film will probably remember that part more so than any other part in the movie, because it's just so fucking crazy. So, you know, these, I don't know what you call monk-like people kind of come in, and they've got this device that, I don't even know how to explain what it is exactly. It looks like a doorknob, but they jam it in her mouth, and then they twist it, and it expands, and like breaks her jaw, and all her teeth come flying out and everything. That's the hardest part of the movie. Yeah. Besides that, Grundy, I actually forgot about that. Like, that's another memorable part in the film too. But that's got to be one of the more unique kind of deaths in the film. So the rest of the movie centers around, like, once this box is opened up and the statues and then this is all red, like, all this chaos starts to ensue, and there's these murders and like all over Rome, there's murders and there's suicides, and there's one scene. They got a bunch of scenes that kind of reminded me of The Happening. Even the way that they were filmed were kind of like The Happening. So I don't know, just something about the camera work is really flat and it's kind of lifeless. And a lot of the death scenes were kind of done that same way, where people are kind of in a trance. And there's one scene where there's like a woman walking along and she's on a bridge and she's holding a baby, and then she just like dumps the baby off into the river, and then these guys are getting stabbed and they're busting up cars. Just to show like basic, that once that was opened up, it was like a portal to hell, and like this gateway's opened up and everybody's kind of losing their mind. So all this is going on, and Sarah, who's Asia Argento's character, realizes that she's got to figure out like how to destroy whatever's gotten out of this box, and so she goes to a priest, and she's trying to figure out about the three mothers and what will help kill this mother, and of course everybody she goes to ends up getting killed by. And there's another sub kind of thing in this damn movie that kills me, which is there's like a baboon who is kind of like a familiar. You know how all witches have like a familiar, like they're usually something cool though, like a cat or a crow or something like that. But in this, it's freaking a baboon. Very similar to the one in Phenomena that just kind of follows around in the story and like always shows up at these different murders and stuff like that. So I don't know, something about that was just really hokey to me. Like they could have picked anything else to do. So anyway, she gets help from the priest, and of course the priest gets murdered. One of the parishioners commits suicide. All this crazy supernatural happenings start going on, and so finally, there's some dude that's following her around that I didn't really pick up that subplot that well of what his kind of role in the film was, but anyway, she thinks that he's trying to help her. But it comes to find out that he's dead and he's been reanimated by the mother, and he's, trying to kill her too. So there's just all this kind of stuff going on. The one thing really missing from all this, by the way, is any kind of like non sequitur fantasy kind of stuff. This is all filmed very like linear, straightforward. No kind of like Suspiria Inferno stuff where there's just, this really amazing kind of soft lighting and it all feels like a dream. This really looks like Law and Order or CSI or something like that. That was, besides the music, which is very much like that, that was another big part of what I had a problem with this movie. It was like, it's just filmed very dull and lifeless and not Argento. Now the costumes and things like that are great, and the designs of a lot of the main characters are great, but the fucking cinematography of the film itself looks just, I don't know, just lifeless. That's the best way I can describe it. Before I get to the end of this movie though, and the craziness that is, I get a couple of comments going here first. Okay, so Jake says it lacks atmosphere. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It really does. The score sucks. The climax is underwhelming. It doesn't resemble the other two films, the trilogy at all. The gore is good and the plot is fine, but otherwise it's hard pass. That's pretty much. I won't say pass on it, but I'd say that's a pretty accurate description. And Phantasmat says that the Suspiria reboot was fantastic, which I agree with that too. I think that captured more of an Argento feel than Mother of Tears, and it wasn't even directed by Argento. So let's see. Duo's death scene so brutal and messed up. Douglas asked which one we're talking about. We're talking about Mother of Tears. The finale in Mother of Tears is messed up and so much fun. I kind of agree with that. It's definitely messed up. So Grande's got a good point too. He says the movies Argento made in his 20s and 30s are fantastic. This was made when he was pushing 60. Considering the long layoff, I think the movie still delivers. It just lacks the style people expect. I think that's true as well. Douglas says he was running on fumes. I don't know, though. I mean, I don't know if he was running on fumes or not, but I just know there's something missing in this film that, you know, I thought that a lot of his later stuff, and there's another one that we're going to be talking about too that I think is amazing. He was still able to capture some of that magic, but in this one, I can't tell. Another problem with the movie too is the dubbing. The English dubbing in that movie is just awful, man. Like the fucking voice actors that they picked are just really cringy when you listen to them. You just cannot believe that they would actually pick like those people. Like they got a million different options and they pick like the most dull, boring, lifeless kind of overdubs that you can imagine too, to go along with everything else. It's kind of lifeless in it too. Rambo asked a good question. Is there a director in the U.S. that came close to giving off an Argento feel in an American movie? God, in the U.S.? The closest guy that I can think of, there was two of them actually, and people think I'm crazy. De Palma did, because, I mean, I think the two of them influenced each other in a lot of ways. But I think that Cronenberg, in some ways, just with the sheer nonsensical, non-linear kind of stuff, and actually in a couple of scenes, and especially in like stuff in Brain Damage, Henenlotter, I think, was able to do it a little bit too. Coscarelli, that's a good one. Yeah. The First Phantasm is about as close to Argento as you can get. Okay, so the ending of this movie, though. So, Sarah tracks down the mother and finally is able to get her in this like cave where all these minions is a good word, druids, people dressed like ancient Egyptians, half naked like ancient Egyptians, are all like there performing this ceremony. And so I guess it's her and this police officer that she befriends, who I really the point of these movies is really not like the plot or the in terms of the characters and stuff like that, but she somehow or another picks him up somewhere along the way. And so they're kind of like sneaking around trying to figure out what's going on. They get caught. Turns out that these minions are cannibals, and not the fine young ones, but the actual like really creepy crazy ones. And they kind of torture the dude and start to eat him. And so somewhere in the middle of this, Sarah's character finds out, a way to kill the mother, which I'm not going to go into because you need to at least watch the end of this movie. And it's visual effects, the way that it ends, and it's kind of silly. At least one part of it's really silly. So I think it's kind of worth like watching just to experience that part of it. The digital effects and the visual effects in this movie, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should try not to if you can. So I don't know though. What did you guys think? And I'm going to tell you my final thoughts. Like, I thought it did not hold up like I thought it was going to. I was really psyched to watch this movie again because I loved this movie when it came out. I would give it now a 6 out of 10. I mean, I've watched all these Argento movies leading up to this point, and I've got a pretty good idea, like his style and, what makes his movies tick, and the audiences, that watch them, what they like about them. But there's a lot of just kind of bleh in this movie. There's some great gore. There's some great shots. There's some great costumes, wardrobes. The rest of it, though, the cinematography, the score, the dubbing, it all serves to kind of take me out of this movie. I wish that it didn't. I wish I would have enjoyed this more the second time around, maybe the third time around. I saw it a couple of times back in the day. I just didn't. I tried, and it kind of bummed me out. So let's see. What did everyone else think about it real quick? Aiden says that he loves Mother of Tears. Definitely Argento's last great film. I think I would disagree with that because I think I know what his last great film is. And I think we're going to be talking about it. And who knows, though? The Sunglasses movie could be his last great film. Grande says he loves it, to be honest. His last great movie, hoping it gets Region 1 Blu-ray Special Edition. Yeah, it's got a Blu-ray, but it's that one that's like, it's out of print, and it goes for a flat-out fortune now. I'm trying to remember who put that out, too. Because Wes has it, but... And Subjective Perspective Collective says that I don't think it's definitely not his worst 2000s movie. I'm trying to figure out how... I don't think it's definitely not his worst 2000s movie. Okay. So it's not his worst 2000s movie. No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is by a long shot. But a lot of people on here have been commenting, and I think that this is true. It has a conclusion, and it's not a horrible conclusion. It's not like Matrix Revelations conclusion. You know what I mean? It's not something where just people look at it and fucking laugh their ass off nowadays. It's a fairly solid conclusion to that trilogy, which was made, let's keep in mind, 30 years after the original start. So, I mean, come on. Let's give it a little bit of its due here. It's not the worst Argento film by a million times. It's not the best Argento film. Like I said, 6 out of 10. That's kind of where I would put it. So yeah, I know what we're going to do next. It took a lot to get me to watch this movie again. And I'm glad that I did. I'm going to tell you why. Believe it or not, believe this shit or not, I actually enjoyed this movie. I'm not sure why. There's some horrible acting and visual effects and cinematography in this movie. But I think I went into this with so low of expectations that it actually surprised me. Because it's basically like a college student filmed a play of Dracula. That's what it's like. It's filmed. It looks awful. It looks fucking awful. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to lie. It's probably his ugliest film. But is it his worst film? No, it's really not. Is it enjoyable? Not really. Like, it's not enjoyable in the sense of like, you want to go back and rewatch it a whole bunch of times, like any of the first, 7 or 8 films that he made. It's not that bad. I don't get the hate. I really don't. Like Phantom of the Opera. Yes, somebody mentioned this. Phantom of the Opera is 1,000 times worse than this movie. It really is. So I'm not entirely sure what the deal is, but okay, I guess I'll talk about it. And people are literally losing their mind in here. I didn't get paid to say that. I just didn't think. I was surprised in two different ways. I was surprised in of the fact that I didn't like Mother of Tears, and I was surprised in the fact that I actually liked Dracula 3D. I don't know what the hell's going on anymore. Okay, Subjective hasn't seen it. Grande can't believe it. Aiden says is that I watch Dracula 3D every once in a while because of how bizarre and stupid it is. That's pretty much true. It says I didn't want the name of Dracula to be tarnished in my mind. So, I don't know how many people have seen this movie. Or, Matt, checks in the mail, buddy. I don't know how many people have actually seen this movie or how many people are going off of like what other people have said about this movie. Because for a long time, I went off like just everybody took a giant steaming shit on this movie. And here's how I'll frame this for you, okay? There's been a lot of Dracula movies made. Is it as good as, like, let's say, Hammer Dracula or, like, even Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola one, or the original? No, it's nowhere near like anything like those movies. And the biggest reason why I think that this movie fails, if it does fail, or why it's like so not memorable to people, is because the visual effects in this movie where they tried to make it 3D are freaking awful. And there's matte paintings, and I fucking hate like matte paintings when they are like not done well, and like you can clearly tell like what it is. And there's a lot of that. Like I said, it's like a play. It's like if somebody walked in, pointed a camera at a room, and they had painted like the walls to look like a scene, and you know people opened a door or something and stepped through them, and that's what this movie looks like. And that's the biggest kind of like problem that I have with the movie. It's freaking, that part of it's awful. Now, here's what I like about the movie. There's been a million different Dracula interpretations. It's not really any worse than like half of the ones that I've seen. It's exactly the film. It's the film that you know. Like, it's the Dracula story that you know. Like the Carpathian Mountains. They go, I guess there's not like the big scene where they go and try to find Dracula or anything like that, but all of the typical people are in it. You've got Mina, you've got Lucy, you've got like all the characters that you know from these movies. Van Helsing's in it, played by Rutger Hauer, which is not like Rutger Hauer's finest moment, if we are being honest. But it's that same story. Like, there's a small village. You know, one of the girls goes missing. Turns out, you know, she's a vampire. They dig her up. They try to kill her with a stake. You know, she ends up getting loose. She wreaks havoc in the village. Dracula comes in. He, you know, starts turning all the women into vampires. It's the typical Dracula movie. It's, if like I said, if you want to watch Dario Argento's interpretation of a play of Dracula, and kind of a flat play of Dracula, this would be it. There's special features on this, by the way. There's a behind the scenes documentary on this fucking Blu-ray, a music video, and all of the trailers, and there's a 2D and 3D version of the film for your 3D televisions that nobody has. I don't know. I don't know why I like this movie. So, let's see. I'll give you some specs on it and go through a couple of these. Darren says he thought it was boring and dull throughout. Is it though? Is it any more boring than any other Dracula movie? Like, let's be honest, with some of the Hammer movies and stuff like that, not really. It's about on par. Manic Exorcism says Dracula 3D. He's compared to all the successful Dracula films that preceded. I'm glad it exists though because it's just a big bug fuck weird. Very true. He says he's going to watch it. Subjective Perspective Collector says I'm going to watch it, but I have to watch Bela Lugosi right after. That's fair enough. The Praying Mantis is legendary. We haven't got to the Praying Mantis yet, but we will. The Mayor says he saw the Blu-ray of Argento's Dracula at the Dollar Tree. I didn't know it was over there, but that makes sense. Yeah, the CGI in this movie looks like Windows Movie Maker. Like if you could put CGI and shit through that, that's what this would look like. Lucio Inferno, you're gonna skip this one? I wouldn't skip this one. Look, CK, look. I'm trying to convince people that Dracula 3D is not that bad. I'm trying to convince them of that. They not believe me. I'm not even sure if you've seen this movie, but if you have, this movie is not that bad. It's not. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I'll stick by that. It's an average, lame, Dracula movie, man. I mean, it's not any worse than any of the others I've seen. So let's get into some... Well, there's a couple of scenes that are worse. Yeah, I'll give you that. But I don't know. It premiered... It premiered... No, it didn't. According to this, Dracula 3D premiered at Cannes Film Festival on May 19th, 2012. And it was released theatrically in November of 2013. Are you fucking serious? They took this movie to the Cannes Film Festival. That's the best thing I've ever heard. I would give anything in the world to have seen the reaction of anybody that watched this movie there. Oh my God. Yeah, it's not great. But just the thought of that being at the fucking Cannes Film Festival, it's so killer. Oh, it's like Rutger Hauer's finest moment. By the way, side note to that conversation, Rutger Hauer did some of his best work, I think, around the time, would have been around the time of this, when he did Hobo with a Shotgun. I still think that's one of his best films. I think that's one of his most well-acted films. This isn't. Don't get me wrong. Dracula 3D is not in any way going to win any awards for anybody in the acting category. It's got some decent gore in it, though. There's a couple of scenes, like the shovel scene and some of the succubus scenes that have got some decent gore in it. It's not that bad. But the acting in it's awful. And I just feel like that Rutger Hauer was really doing a lot better stuff even at this time in his career. So, yeah. You would listen, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you're going to watch this movie, it would help to be drunk. Probably got a 10-minute standing ovation. Probably did. A lot of people are saying, can you imagine watching this at the theater? Stuntman Mark says, the idea of Argento doing Dracula sounds great and probably could have been if he had done it in the late 70s or early 80s. Argento and CGI don't mix. That's 100% truth. There's a lot of these movies, including some of the other ones too, like Trauma is the one that I think of the most, where CGI, like every other part of that movie was great. The CGI in that fucking movie is some of the worst, like I don't know if it's the money issue or if he just doesn't know how to use that. I'm not sure what it is, but Dracula 3D is no exception. There's some really horrible stuff in it. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a movie where it just exists. It's an average film. I'm glad I watched it because it completes, like, at least you get to see kind of like, he did Phantom of the Opera, and now you kind of get to see what it would be like if he did Dracula. It's not, I agree with what somebody was saying, where if he'd have done that movie if he'd done an interpretation of that movie in the 70s and 80s, it would have been a masterpiece, probably. Alright, so 3D or a 4K Dracula 3D. That's a lot of numbers and letters. That would be amazing, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. No, James. As a matter of fact, I don't think that does happen in this, which is weird because it seems to happen in every single other movie. The Stendhal syndrome has god awful CGI in it. Also, that's very true. I think that everybody should watch it. I think everybody should watch Dracula 3D at least once. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so the movie did dick for box office, and with a budget of $5.6 million, whatever that is that? I can't tell if that's euros or what that is, but anyway, it made back $7.7 million, which basically I think means it broke even, which that's amazing to think that fucking movie broke even. The reception was universally negative. It has a 14% right now on Rotten Tomatoes. It's considered to be like a schlock kind of film. It's considered to be even campier than the Hammer versions of Dracula. I'm telling you, though, don't believe the hype. Go out and get your Dollar Tree versions of Dracula 3D now before they sell out. Don't say I didn't tell you, though. This movie's not that bad. All right. So, any closing thoughts about Dracula? I could never thought I'd say that. Any closing thoughts about Argento's Dracula 3D? Well, before we get on to this, Dracula's fucking 3D. Oh yeah, well, this would kind of be what I would imagine. I'm still waiting for Bruno Mattei to make his Dracula masterpiece. I'm kind of thinking it would kind of look like this. It would be cheaper than this somehow, but it would have a very similar look, I think. Yeah, Aiden says that he's glad Argento took some time off after Dracula. Maybe this was a good thing because this maybe finally broke Argento to the point where he was like, you know what? I need to take a break. I need to recollect my thoughts and try to do something that's not going to get universally shit on. Rambo says, believe the hype, it's that bad. It's worse. It's not that bad. It's not that bad, Rambo. Dracula 3D is entertaining. I don't think it's not entertaining. And finally, Dale says, if anything, it's worth these comments. Jake says it's in his 3 worst. No, it ain't. It ain't. It is not. I can think of at least 3 or 4 other films right now that are worse than this. As a matter of fact, Phantom of the Opera is worse 3 times more than this, so that counts. Alright, so let's move on to the unsung masterpiece in this series. A film that I had never really paid any attention to. And a film that, in my opinion, is probably his most underrated film. I can't believe more people don't talk about this movie. I'm not sure why. I guess it's because it was a later Argento film, and people really don't talk about his later films, period. But, man, this film is right up there with some of his best films. I will champion this film, and I'm going to tell you all the reasons why here in a second. But this is the Scorpion release version of this, and you've got on here, there's some audio commentaries. There's an interview with Argento. There's an interview with the set designer and a couple of the actresses. I'm not sure if this is out of print now. It might be. I don't know. The one thing I really don't like about this, though, is the slipcover and the Blu-ray are both the same artwork. I don't like that. Like, what the freak is the point of that? They should have done, and you can see they didn't do this, the dual kind of cover, man. Because, I mean, that's a pretty badass cover, but I don't know. It's just not... It's not amazing or anything. They should have given you an option. Anyway, they didn't. 2001. What a weird time for films in general. If you could rewind back to 2001 and everything that was going on at that time. That's when he releases this, and I think it just got overshadowed by everything else. I really, really think this is one of his better films. Okay, so first thing to know about this movie is it's a giallo, and it's weird because it comes at a time when giallos really weren't popular whatsoever, and people really weren't doing them anymore. Not even, some of the bigger name people, Italian directors at that time, weren't doing it. But it's about a detective, which is played by Max von Sydow, and you might remember him as the guy from The Exorcist. Most people do. He's investigating a series of murders, and they're known as the dwarf murders, because one of the main suspects is a guy with dwarfism. Not suspects, but the guy that ends up dead is in dwarfism. And he's the lead detective on this case, and the case kind of goes cold, and 17 years later, there's this new string of murders that start to happen that remind a lot of people of those murders, and so they continue, and they try to get him to come out of retirement. I think he's retired. Pretty sure he is in this film. And they try to get Max von Sydow to come out of retirement and help kind of solve the murder mystery. And one of the key elements of this movie, because you know how, like, we're talking about the Fulci film, The Psychic, how it has like the 7 notes and all that. There's some sort of gimmick in a lot of these giallo movies. The one in this one is that the murderer always has like an old nursery rhyme that comes into play in this as well. Which you come to find out kind of like the reason behind that at the end of the film. Here's the really great part about this movie. I don't know, this movie came at like the perfect time, in my opinion, because CGI and things like that were not that widespread yet. Not to the point of like what they would become in like the later 2000s. So most everything in this movie is practical. It's got the same type of atmosphere as a lot of the movies, a lot of the early giallos that he did. It's got some great acting because Max von Sydow is a great actor. And I don't know how the fuck they got him to do this movie, by the way. It's such an odd movie for him to be in, especially around that time, but he's pitch perfect in it. It's got great music. Like the main score of the movie is great too. That's what I'm saying. All the elements that make a classic Argento movie are in this movie, including the ending, which I thought was like, you know, it ain't gonna blow your skirt off or anything like Deep Red style, but it's serviceable enough, you know, for a movie made in 2001. And of course, there's going to be a couple of drawbacks to this movie, but I think that far and away the good parts about this movie make up for that a million times. So I'm curious though. I mean, has anybody seen this movie? People that, you know, in the chat, like, because I think this is one of his least seen films. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Aiden says, Sleepless looks like a film made in the 80s. It really does. Kino has Sleepless and The Card Player now. I just got my copies this week. That's awesome. You need to. Anybody that doesn't have this, it will be cheap as hell on Kino. It'd probably be like $10 or something like that. Lucio says, Sleepless is one of the last 3 Argento films I haven't seen, not counting Dracula. Looking forward to this one despite the hate. Is there hate for this movie? Or are you talking about Dracula? Is there hate for Sleepless? Like, I hope not. That would be crazy. Douglas says that he remembers seeing it when he was a kid at Blockbuster but never got a chance to check it out as an adult. Just remember the cover art. Matt says, don't spoil Sleepless. I really wasn't going to. Like I said, I don't think the ending is just, you know, mind-blowingly good or anything. I'll tell you what is mind-blowingly good in this movie, though. Aside from the score and the acting, is the special effects, the makeup effects. It's on par with like Fulci stuff in terms of just how graphic and kind of like crazy some of the stuff in this movie is. So imagine like you take all of the gore that you loved about his stuff in the, you know, the 80s, but you updated it to where the makeup effects were as good as they were in like the early 2000s. And that's what's in this film. It's like the last bastion of really good practical makeup effects. Which is something that I live for in these kind of movies. Like if it's CG or visual effects, or like, it always just makes me hate the movie and takes me out of it. But in this case, well, not always. There's been some movies that did it okay, but most of the time in low budget, you're not going to do it okay. But this movie is none of that and nails a lot of this stuff too. So Darren says, great performances by Maxwell and Sydow. Probably one of my favorite Argento performances. Soundtrack is amazing. See, Jake says he revisited Sleepless 2 years ago. He dug it. The English horn mouth stabbing scene, as well as the train stalking at the start of the highlights. The train stalking is amazing because it goes on forever. There's a scene in the movie where one of the main characters is like stalked on a train by the black glove-ish kind of killer, and it just goes on and on and on. And when you think it's over with, it's not over with, and there's a lot of really good camera work and cinematography in that scene especially. Grande says he really digs this movie. Douglas says going to check it out based off what you all say. I think that you should. Like, I know that nobody's really going to check out Dracula 3D based on my slight recommendation of that movie. But if you check out anything based on anything I've said in this series, you should check out Sleepless. And also probably like Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Bird with Crystal Plumage. Like the early stuff too. Like based on any of these videos, check out those movies. Carter Detention, Sleepless is the last great Argento movie. I believe that it is. Like, I actually 100% agree with that. It's because there was some good Argento movies that followed after this one. But this was the last one that really had that feel and really had that kind of, all the elements line up in this movie. the score, the makeup effects, the acting, the atmosphere, the cinematography, it's all there. It's all pretty amazing. Stuntman Mark says the main theme is great and the music throughout fits so well. Sleepless is his last great film. There's a lot of people that are saying that on here. Yeah. Kind of had New York Ripper, vibes of New York Ripper. The mayor says that he watched Contraband on Tubi and lots of unexpected gore considering it's not a horror film. This is a great fucking question. What the hell did happen to Argento's visual style after Sleepless? I don't know. I've got to imagine that it was the budget. I mean, the only thing I can think of was that around like that time period, and after this, maybe the budgets of his film got to the point where like he couldn't make films on that kind of level anymore. He had to go with the lesser kind of visual effects and CG and stuff like that, and lesser kind of cameras and things as well. I don't know though. I wish I did know, because this is the last movie that really looks like an Argento movie. Yes, Matt, you're going to make another Kino order right now and put this in it. Douglas says that he is going to watch Dracula 3D and don't abuse the power of my recommendations. So a lot of people are apparently going to watch Dracula 3D. Listen, don't go into Dracula 3D expecting a lot. That's what I did. I mean, my expectations were so low that I was like, God, this movie's fucking amazing compared to what I thought it was going to be. Here's my question though. Here's a question to help end this entire series. Is there a bad Argento movie? I mean, a truly awful Argento movie. Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you that these three are not it, in my opinion. None of them. This is a fucking classic. Mother of Tears is serviceable. Dracula 3D I don't want to say it's underrated. That's a bit of a stretch, but is there a bad, awful, unwatchable Argento movie? Because I am not sure that there is. I'm really... Look. I'm being dead serious. I'm not joking. Like, I watched Dracula 3D and was like, this movie is not that bad. Like, I don't know what the fuck everybody's talking about. Okay, so it says Family Opera, Giallo, and Dracula 3D are all bad Argento movies. I haven't seen Giallo, and I may not ever get a chance to watch it, but Family Opera is pretty bad. I don't think it's awful. It might be awful. It might be. The Card Player, I've seen The Card Player. It's not an awful movie to me. It looks like every other movie made around that time. It does not look like an Argento film, but it's not awful. Now listen, this is actually not a bad... Two Evil Eyes is not that great. I'm going to sit here and talk shit about Two Evil Eyes and praise Dracula 3D. That seems insane. But I never liked Two Evil Eyes. I never did. And I love Argento and I love Romero. I never liked that fucking movie. Steve says it's Giallo. I'm kind of afraid to watch Giallo. Number one, I hate Adrian Brody. Number 2, I hate the look, just like the trailer, just the look of the film. It's like combines like two of the worst things, like Adrian Brody's face and like awful flat cinematography. Has Cronenberg... Okay, so it says, whose horror comeback will have the better movie? Argento with Black Glasses or Cronenberg with Crimes of the Future? Does Cronenberg really need a comeback? Like, he already had a comeback, really. Like, the shit that he made in the, what would it have been, like 2000s, early 90s, when he, did History of Violence and Eastern Promises, and everybody, hopped aboard that train for a while. And, like, I mean, he really doesn't need another comeback. He was huge in the 80s and then huge again there for a while. Argento was just kind of huge in the late 70s and early 80s. I'm going to rank them. I'm going to fucking rank these movies. I hadn't thought about that until right now when you said that, but I might as well, because this is the last show I'm doing. The last show I'm going to do for a while, so I'm going to rank all the Argento movies, and I encourage you all to do so as well. Dracula 3D is in the top 5. I'm just kidding. It's not. It's not a bad movie, though. Jake says, the card player is like cinematic homework. He fucking hates it. Stupid concept, stupid climax. Phantom and Dracula are awful, but they aren't boring. Very good point. What about Trauma? I actually did Trauma in my last video. I love Trauma. I thought that some of the visual effects in it were stupid, but just as a whole, that movie's got a really good atmosphere too. It's in the CG, or not the CG, but the CSI style Argento, where it's like a murder mystery-ish kind of thing that kind of looks like, all those horrible early 2000s TV shows like that. Like, it was made in the 90s, I'm pretty sure, but it looks like a fucking early 2000 TV show. This is a good question, too. We'll get to both these. What are the top 3 underrated Argento films? It's a great question. A lot of people taking a shit on the card player. Oh, God. The mayor says, Hamilton Books has the DVD for like $4 a Giallo. Do I want to see it? I don't know if I want to see it or not. That's one of my favorite parts about that movie, is that Argento never paid Adrian Brody. That's a good idea too, Rambo. A live first watch commentary of Giallo. This is something that all kinds of people give me shit about. But I submit to you that all the people in here that love Argento, I submit to you that he never did anything that looked better than the opening 30 minutes of Inferno. I don't think that he did. I think all of that, and especially the underwater scenes, and a lot of the scenes after that too, I don't think that he made a better looking movie. It doesn't make a goddamn lick of sense, but it's great looking. Stendhal Syndrome is underrated in my opinion too. I think it is. It's not as underrated as Sleepless though, because people still reference Stendhal Syndrome. I still hear, people talk about it when you bring up Argento. I've never heard anybody bring up Sleepless. Like, I wouldn't even know that movie fucking existed if it wasn't for Scorpion putting it out. Let's see here. Aiden says the card player is underrated. So fuck all of you. It says Opera is one of the most underrated Argento movies. That's a good point. It's not really as known as the rest of them from that time period for some reason. Oh, uh-oh. Got a super chat. Hell yeah, Subjective Perspective Collective. It's good that I can do that. Mash that like button and pay the man, you cheap sons of bitches. Pay me. Pin me, pay me. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to, but I do appreciate it. Alright, let's take let's take the second question first. All right. So the question was, what do I consider to be some of the most underrated Argento films? Okay. So right off the top of my head, I think Sleepless is the number one underrated film because, like I said, nobody references it. I think Four Flies on Grey Velvet is his most underrated early film. That movie is a fucking trip. That's the best way I can explain it. That movie is one of the most unavailable of his movies. I mean, it's unavailable is not the right word. It doesn't have like a really good special edition, ultimate edition, like all those other movies have around that time period, and the Animal trilogy as well. They all have these great like editions put out by Arrow or Synapse or anything. So it's not as accessible, I guess. But it's vastly kind of underrated film too. Trauma. Somebody mentioned Trauma. I think that's another one that's I think it's because that movie is really slow and it's not as gory as anybody would think, especially considering that Tom Savini had anything to do with it. And I think that kind of like hurts it because that's what everybody kind of expected going into it. But I think that it's a really good kind of murder mystery. Those would be my picks. Hey, I mean, somebody on here mentioned Love Inferno. Inferno might be the most underrated one. Fuck, because I think that it's right up there with his best films. A lot of people are agreeing that people don't praise Four Flies more. The ending of that movie, if you haven't seen Four Flies on Grey Velvet, I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's got one of the best Argento endings. I think Deep Red is probably the best Argento ending. I don't know how you get around that movie in terms of it being like a classic giallo style ending. But I think Four Flies is like probably my second favorite. So that would be my picks for like the most underrated ones. Now for the hard part, because I really haven't even like thought about this until right now. How do you rank Argento's movies? I'm going to rank the top 5. I don't know if I can do 10. I mean, it would be really difficult to do 10. All right. Jesus Christ. Number 5. This is fucking brutal. Like, this is 1,000 times harder than Fulci. God. Never mind. I don't think I want to rank these. This is like the hardest list I've ever tried to compile of any director, I think, to rank the top 5 Argento movies. Well, of course, Dracula 3D is number 5. I mean, that's a given. All right, let's do this. Okay. Off the top of my head. Number 5, just real quick. Number 5 would be Phenomena, and I'll tell you why. Like, that movie, although it's not very good, is the most insane, chaotic Argento movie. And it's got a little bit of everything in it. So it's got some giallo kind of shit. It's got some fantasy kind of shit. It's got like, elements of all that to it. It's a mess of a movie, by the way. That's probably why it's got all that stuff in it. So I'm going to put Phenomena at number 5. God, number 4. frig. God. I don't know if I can do it. Because I'm thinking like all of the Animal trilogy are like almost equally as good to me. So I don't know how I would pick that. Like, I think my personal favorite is Four Flies at this point, but that could always change. So I'll put that at number 4. And then the top 3 are kind of easy for me. So people are gonna shit. I would go with Tenebrae, Inferno, and Suspiria. I think the first, like I said, 30 minutes of Inferno make it like in my top 5. So that's what I'm going to say. Tenebrae, if you really like Argento, then you already know Tenebrae's got to be in your top 5. There ain't no fucking way it's not. It's the most violent, just insane giallo film, one of the most ever. And like you talk about cinematography that's amazing. Like that fucking movie is crazy. Listen, people asking me where's shit at. I told you don't make me rank them. I tried to tell you, like I didn't want to do it. So yeah, at some point we'll probably do like a whole separate kind of stream, just talking about like, you know, a lot of these movies and ranking them. We could even do like an Italian horror film ranking where we take them all, man. We take Argento and Fulci and Martino and Martina Navratilova and all the other great Italian directors, and we rank them all top 10 list, something like that. Anyway, let's see what how close I am to a lot of people on here's list. So Grande says Opera, Tenebrae, Phenomena, Deep Red, and Suspiria. That's a great list. Darren says Suspiria, Opera, Tenebrae, top 3, but it changes all the time. See, that's the problem. This could be completely different, like, in a week. There's so many good ones. Aiden, Suspiria, Phenomena, Tenebrae, Deep Red, and Opera. That's good too. Matt says too many greats to fill the list. Deep Red, Birth, Crystal Plumage, Suspiria, Tenebrae, and Opera. A lot of opera fans on here. Tom Arnold says The Cat of Nine Tails, Dracula 3D, Family Opera, Giallo, and Suspiria. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's probably old Curly Joe's. Jake, Suspiria, Four Flies. Thank God somebody put Four Flies in there, because I think that's like one of the more underrated great ones. Deep Reds, really. Stendhal Syndrome and Inferno. Yes, that's some good like deep cuts there. Carded Redemption with the $5. Thank you, man. Most underrated Argento scene is the chase sequence through the garden in Four Flies. There's been some really underrated Argento scenes in movies too. Not the least of which is the skull-splitting shovel scene in Dracula 3D. Check it out. You don't believe me? Check it out. Cat of Nine Tails is underrated. I would have put that probably next besides Four Flies. So that one could have alternated on my number 4. It could have either been Four Flies on Grey Velvet or Cat of Nine Tails. Listen, the biggest part about Cat of Nine Tails is what's his name? Carl Malden, I think. His performance in that movie, and the little girl too, is fucking outstanding. It's a great giallo. Okay, Subjective says Tenebrae, Deep Red, Suspiria, Opera, and Phenomena. It's pretty close to mine. Nobody is putting Inferno in there, but I think that it's in the top 5. I did defend that movie though, and I will defend Inferno and Cat of Nine Tails and Dracula 3D. They're all fucking classics. I'm just kidding. The last one's not a classic. Maybe it is, though. Who's to say? Jake says that Stendhal has the best character writing in any Argento film. All character arcs aren't something that he's known for. That's true. He's not known for that. Inferno does definitely need a 4K, by the way. Okay, so just to end on this, if you haven't seen this movie, you don't own this movie, buy this fucking movie. Go to Kino. Apparently it's on sale. It should be pretty cheap. It's well worth like whatever you're going to pay for it. So there's some that I left out that I eventually hope to do. Just to be a completist, I want to do, do you like Hitchcock, The Card Player, Giallo if I can ever get a chance to see it, the Masters of Horror episodes, and a couple of other ones too. But I think that for now, that's a pretty good that's a pretty good list of the ones that I've done. If you haven't seen the earlier ones though, I go through the early years in Finding Argento. I go through the middle years where they did all the the stuff that everybody recognizes, and even the 90s leading up to now, which is basically the 2000s. So check those videos out if you haven't. This has been awesome though. I've had a lot of people in here, a lot of feedback. I want to thank everybody that's come to these, especially the Fulci ones and the Argento ones. I don't know what I'm going to do next in terms of one of these standalone kind of shows. We've been kicking around ideas for a while. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions. That now would be the time, because I want it to be something that highlights a particular filmmaker or a style of film, maybe too, that can kind of go in multi parts. So I've kicked around Cronenberg because I love his stuff. So if anybody has any suggestions about what the next series of shows should be, I'm open to them. Oh yeah, Phantasmat. The 4K of Tenebrae's coming. I can go ahead and tell you that. Yeah, and keep in mind, it does not have to be Italian. There's a lot of other filmmakers that don't get any credit. Somebody posted one that I actually thought about too, which is Henlotter, Category 3 and Me. That's one that I would love to do. Rambo, Deodato is another good one. I mean, there's a lot of different options here. Oh my God, can we get Old Curly Jaws to review Dracula 3D? I hope so. Bruno Mattei. Listen, a Bruno Mattei fucking retrospective of his movies. That's a great idea, really. That would be like an endurance test. That may be worse than having to go back and watch Salo. I'm not sure. But it may be worth it. Romero is one I thought about. But the thing about Romero is, and a lot of these other guys too, like Hooper, that is talked to death. You really can't. I really don't have anything else to say about Romero or Hooper or Craven or, oh God, who's somebody else? Any of the main Carpenter, the main guys, I don't know, what the fuck am I going to say? At this point, those movies, we've talked about those movies ad nauseum. Michele Soavi. He was kind of a protege of Argento, so that's not a bad idea. De Palma, it's a good idea. Now, De Palma would be an awesome movie because just nobody really ever references his movies. They're not really considered horror movies, I don't think. Even the ones that are horror movies aren't considered horror movies. Cronenberg. Yeah, that would be a good one. There's a lot of good ideas on here. Okay, so take these into consideration, though. It seems like the two most popular ones are Cronenberg and Michele Soavi. So anyway, I'll be back at some point. I'm going to take a break from doing the Tuesday shows because I think I've done like 5 of them back to back. So Jeff Burr, that'd be fucking killer. Talk about Pumpkinhead 2 and Texas Chainsaw 3. But like I said, though, I appreciate everybody coming in, everybody that took part in the show. It's funny because the later I go, the more people show up. But I think that we've done all we can with these movies and with this series. So I hope you liked it. If you like this series, like and do the little bell thing, do whatever else things. And, you know, we'll announce some other stuff coming up. It's going to be pretty cool. And it ain't going to be Fred Vogel. I promise that. Thanks to everybody that's been in here. Thanks to everybody that helped me with the Fulci stuff and the Argento stuff. Thanks to both of them for making some fucking kick-ass movies. And we will return. Go to DeadPit on Patreon. Go to DeadPit on Instagram. Go to DeadPit on Snapchat. Go to DeadPit on Tumblr. Go to DeadPit on Twink. I'm sure that that's an actual thing. I'm Uncle Bill. This has been Ending Argento. Goodbye.
Give us the thumbs up.
Up your butt.
Like, subscribe. And if you subscribe, here's something else you can do. Once you subscribe, you can click the bell notification, right? And it'll notify you anytime that Dead Pit puts up new shit.
Or don't. I really don't give a if you do.
I want you to. I want you to.
I don't care.
Let's keep our community growing here on YouTube.
I don't like it. I don't want you to do nothing.
Listen, they need to do that, pal.
No, don't you dare touch it.
Thumbs up. Subscribe. And click that bell.
For this video officially, it's Old Curly Jaws has a message for you. Go on over to shop.deadpit.com and go look at their Teen Public store right now. You got some new shirts like the Old Curly Jaws official t-shirt, which is brutal and badass. You got the Yummy Gummy shirt with the captain himself on the shirt. You got Uncle Bill's face on a fucking shirt. You got the Final Girl shirt. You got all these shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Get them before they're all out, especially the new one, Bedtime's in 39. It doesn't get better than that, so go on out. Check out these shirts at shop.deadpit.com. Go look at their Teen Public store. You're going to have a good old time. Get them all.
Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. Deadpit on Patreon.com is the only place to check out a complete archive of the old Dead Pit radio shows all the way back from 2005 on, in addition to the midweek shows and fan commentaries, exclusive podcasts, and much more. Dead Pit on Patreon.com if you're interested. Tiers start at only $1.